Welcome back, Visions fans. Ready Player Will here, along with JB79 and KSaun as our very special guest this week. This is episode 11 of the Leonis Report podcast. Evening, guys. I know we're missing some great basketball games right now to record this, but this is obviously a pleasure to be back again. KSaun,
Go
how's
Celtics.
Yeah, right. Celtics all the way. I should be wearing the jersey. What am I thinking? But yeah, KSaun, how's things?
I can get with the Celtics. The Heat took out the Bucks, and I'm a Bucks fan. So, but things are good. Thank you so much for having me on here. I'm excited. So,
Thanks for coming on. It's good to have you. You're our second guest. Obviously, we had City a couple of weeks ago. It's good to have
a tough
him
act
too.
to follow.
So, no, it's good to have kind of different known people from the community come in and join us and have fun talking about the news for the week. And there's actually a lot this week to cover. So, got a pretty stocked week to talk about.
There is. So, KSaun, if you want to, I know you've been on YouTube for a while now. Want to talk a little bit about your channel, how you got started, what you like to cover for content, anything in particular?
Sure. So recently, the videos are mostly just about one thing, but the way I started was actually a Queen guide. So Queen from Persona 5. It was right around the time where Astrius and Celes was kind of running the show. And I was like, hey, this unit's not actually that bad and can kind of run over these teams. And I had done well in a recent Friday night fights for Orange A with Queen. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to make a guide and show people how to use this unit. And then I kind of got a niche for using like niche characters at the time. Like Skahal used to be niche before he became absurdly broken.
Yep.
And then kind of over time kind of changed in my content. Now I basically just do War of the Visions Draft League content. So it's a league I run that I'm sure we'll dive into more later. But yeah, it's a competitive PvP league with a bunch of really awesome players. And that's most of it that I do now. So
Definitely. I really love all of that. And for those of you watching, JB and I are both part of this league this year. It's now the biggest it's ever been, and we will cover that extensively toward the end of this. A little bit about what to expect and what the rules are and everything about it. Definitely a huge fan of your current content, but even your previous content. I think I remember the first time I ever saw you pop on YouTube was this Skahal video, and I remember at the time watching it being like, this is like the greatest character view I've ever seen. And you had like radial charts in there, and I immediately was like, oh, I need to like not steal these visuals, but like I need that. I need this like graphical representation. And it was in like 33 minutes, and it was so comprehensive. I remember at the time I was struggling to like fit my character reviews in 30 minutes or less. I even broke them up into 3 parts because I just like couldn't do it. And I like just super impressed like how much info you were able to condense. So the totally different segue now with the draft league stuff, but like it's such a just I don't know, like a great channel you got going visually and what you do with your community. You have great followers. So yeah, big fan.
I appreciate it. Thank you. I mean, the whole reason, honestly, one of the big reasons I started doing this, inspiration from you guys, and especially with the guide videos and stuff like that. So I was like, well, I want to try my hat at it. So
Glad you did.
I've been a big fan of the WDL stuff. My guildmate Ram, kudos to him. He actually just was the champion for season 2. So I, of course, have to get in here now for season 3 and not let him show me up. So
absolutely.
Totally
Yeah,
kidding.
Ram 9, shout out to him. I mean, he crushed it all season. So, and he had,
100%.
yep. We did a playoff redraft where he had to basically pick brand new units for the playoffs, and he did an amazing job there. So
Nice. Well, good. Well, excited to seeing those videos wrap up and kick off this third season of the Draft League. But for now, we'll talk about kind of some of the in-game new things that are coming, which to our surprise and everyone else's is Kefka this week. They are bringing back the Final Fantasy VI collaboration, which includes obviously the other characters as well, but the new character Kefka. A lot of fire units. We kind of knew that was coming, but just not this soon. Are you guys excited for Kefka?
I'm hugely excited. I made my video a couple months ago on my future look for Kefka. I probably spent more time on that video than anyone in recent memory. I kind of went all out on the intro.
The intro was great.
it was
I'm
amazing.
super excited to have him in the game. Obviously, we kind of knew he was coming. Like they had that model in the game from the trial, from the first go around. So, but yeah, he's like an all-time villain for Final Fantasy. Like he's one of the more well-known ones, one of the favorites. So I'm definitely going to be going for him. Definitely looking forward to it.
Yeah, realistically, I probably won't pull for Kefka, but I'm excited to have FF6 back. I just like anytime, any of the collaborations come back. I just enjoy them. So, but I probably won't pull for Kefka. I am notorious for fire is my worst element by far.
Oh.
And so I don't know if I really benefit a whole lot unless I want to run, some sort of like glove team or something like that. So, but we'll see.
Yeah, no, I can agree with that. I've tempered expectations for Kefka. The thing I don't know yet is how much damage he realistically does. I still have kind of like a sour taste in my mouth from Roy's release, where Roy's like a really solid, well-rounded character, but I remember putting him into action and the damage just wasn't up to par with what we see with some of the other more recent units. But Kefka obviously brings not only a whole bunch of utility, which we'll talk about, I'm sure through this character review right now, but it's really the damage aspect where you're always like thinking about like who can you replace in my team of three, and there's a lot of unique stuff with some of what he brings for buffs with the hate up, but he's got two different imperils, some status effects here and there. He's got the arithmetician sub, so there's a lot of components that like make him a checklist like awesome character. But when you're saving Vizier and everything's going on with reincarnations, it does make it a tougher decision. At least though, we have those like 4 or 5 weeks before collab is usually over. So even if he's not an immediate pull, I'm definitely banking on like a couple weeks from now, seeing what the what the stash has.
I can't believe that it's coming a month early. Like I was expecting, like if they were gonna shift anything up, I thought maybe a Vega was coming in, like because they had Reagan and his VC were kind of condensed. Thought maybe either a global exclusive this week, or they push up and have Vega to start the month and kind of get on the monthly cadence with the Warriors of the Crystal. Last thing I expected to see was Final Fantasy VI, but I am glad that it is coming.
Yeah, I agree fully. I don't have much more to say on that.
Right? If I had to guess, I think Gumi's like relatively in touch with global when it comes to our meta and like gauging the supply and demand, if you will. And I think if they released Vega this week, they'd know with Bradley being this rampant and like how hyped he was. I think they would know that like no one would pull for Vega. I can't remember. There's another Warrior of the Crystal. Oh, like Rugia. I think at the time, like Rugia was just an asinine character to pull for at the height of the wind meta because everyone's so kind of like caught up in the moment. And I can't help but feel like Vega kind of falls under that same thing, that if they released him, they know that like just no one's going to go for him. So at least bring out Kefka. It's one of those units that people are going to have FOMO if they don't pull. It's kind of a fan favorite. I am surprised though that they are bringing up his vision card, but it is one that is kind of, again, job-based vision card that people are unsure how to feel about. That's some magic attack, some defense, some HP. I know this is coming out a week ahead of schedule, where they also have some bestowed effects that they're giving to Kefka. I believe it was cast time down. Was the other one accuracy? I think it was.
Yeah, accuracy.
So obviously these cards, they do really good to like tailor them to the character themselves. What do you think about this card off the cuff, though, guys? Any preference on pulling or not pulling?
To me, it seems okay. I don't think it seems like game breaking or anything. It looks more like a sub slot VC than a main one, especially because HP I think is like 80% value in sub slot. So I think you get like 20% if you have it in the sub. But honestly, other than that, I don't think it's anything too crazy.
Yeah, it's a good secondary card. Like anytime that I see HP on the card, it's one that you get a lot of value there in the secondary slot. For the fire element though, this is basically a fire card. You can see, King Mont, Roy Mustang, Yuffie, Sorrow, Ildira, Minwu, Revelka. Really, really solid fire element card. Of course, if you're investing into Roy Mustang and now Kefka, this is also a glove card. So I think that's I think you go for it if you're going to be investing in those units.
Yeah, agreed entirely. Again, another sub-slot vision card, as you both mentioned. In terms of characters that really pop off, really does seem to be the fire-oriented part of it. I do like what Lightning has for potential, where you talk about amplifying a little bit of their damage. That being said, I don't know if the HP really scales well for someone like Summer Helena or Resnick, or obviously not Slime to that extent. But yeah, I mean, it's nice, but I don't think it's necessarily even going to change Kefka per se in terms of what he's reliably going to be doing. That 12 defense gets neutered pretty heavily in the sub slot, and the magic attack's nice, but I'm usually underwhelmed by modifiers overall. Like, I feel like you can get modifiers a couple different ways. Nice card to have, but maybe not a must. Even if you're running Kefka, I feel like there's a lot of really good fire vision cards already, which could probably slot in here. But to your point, the glove is really the upside here, where there are some really good glove vision cards, and who knows what they have down the line planned for that.
In terms of that global exclusive upgrade with the cast time reduction and the accuracy, I'm really interested to see what those numbers are on Wednesday. He has 250 innate cast time reduction, and his big diamond AoE is a 200 cast speed. So with the 250 innate, and he's gonna need like at least 150 bonus on the card to really make it hit a break point for him. And then if you have it in the secondary, it would need to be looking at 200. Right, so ideally it would be a 200 cast time reduction. I don't think that Gumi's ever gone that high, on a cast time reduction kind of unit specific kind of thing. So we'll see what happens. But if they just do the standard 100, it's kind of a wasted upgrade at that point.
I agree.
Yeah.
200 is like painfully slow for an attack skill. So yeah, I don't know if he can get it down to a 1-tick or 2-tick cast or something, you know, using a Val 4 or something like that, then cool. But yeah, I would like to see 200, even if I don't use him.
Yep. Well, that's what it comes down to, because as you mentioned, 250 in the passive, another 200 from a Cheststone passive, another 200 from an Esper, which to me is really what the cast time is for the sub slot, because I don't see this being a main slot vision card. If that sub slot reduction, I think it's 80% as well. It's pretty high. If that doesn't do anything, yeah, thank you. It doesn't change anything to, you know, alter that breakpoint. Really doesn't do much. Now, I do know he has a lot of like instacast potential too, not only from the Arithmetician, but I even think his 120 ability is instacast. So, you know, kind of pros and cons. That doesn't really break the bank for Kefka if he can't cast that, you know, other ability as quickly as you would like. But, you know, a lot of fast units out there nowadays. You need to nail that cast time.
I mean, it is his best ability, so I think it would, if it is 200, like I think that it would be a pretty nice and significant upgrade for him. So I'll keep my fingers crossed.
Definitely. Well, and although, you know, there's always the TMR option, his buffs are way too strong to try to weave a TMR in there. I mean, his teammate buff that gives the hate is like one of the most important things that people are looking forward to, not even mentioning his re-raise, which obviously is a big part of his survivability as well. So you don't really have the free, you know, realm to throw a TMR in there too.
Yeah, exactly.
And talking like TMRs, especially at cast time down, unfortunately, one of the best TMRs for, you know, casters who have long cast times is the Dark Fina TMR, and it's only for females.
Yep.
Come on, War of the Visions, get with the times. Let everybody wear the heels.
Right? Seriously, make that small change. Yeah. I think Lucio Boots is the same, isn't it? Female only.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, Veneras too. I think
Probably.
There's a handful of them. I think. Yeah.
Rough. Ugh, bias. But either way, any predictions for Kefka or other stuff you want to explore in terms of what you're looking for, or do you think just take it as it comes?
Personally, I feel like he looks a little underwhelming to me, just based on like some of the units that have come out recently, especially with Sephiroth and King Bradley and stuff. I mean, his limit break looks disgusting. Especially if it's people who are not prepared for that. Like if you don't have confusion resistance, I mean, you could easily just win an entire fight just by hitting that limit break. But obviously you're only going to have that one time in guild battles. And then, I don't know, aside from that, I just don't think, like his kit looks fine, but I was a little unimpressed personally. Maybe that's a hot take. I don't know, but.
I can see it. I mean, I think he's actually pretty good because he kind of directly counters a lot of what's going on in the meta, like in terms of, for one thing though, you do have to run him behind a tank. Like he is going to be limited to that kind of gameplay, but thankfully his innate hate that he can pass on to the team does give him a way kind of around that where he can sort of make anyone a tank.
Right.
So that alone is kind of interesting, but he's a character that will fold easily if you single him out, but he has very high area resistance, and that's one way you can kind of get at Sephiroth and Bradley. Like all of their best attacks are those large AoEs that they hit multiple units with and do a ton of damage. So, you know, I think that like it could see something interesting with Hio and Kefka. They both have like really high area resistance. I don't know. Seems kind of interesting.
So you took the words out of my mouth.
Really good point.
The two that I see the big upside with is Hio, where obviously he's not a tank, but throw some hate on him. He can take enough hits, and he's got that counter that can regen some health. Certainly viable, probably not to the extent King Mont can, but probably enough that you can win a fight. But the other thing that I think is really interesting is running someone like Yuffie, where if you run a true like evade tank in that essence, or if you give her hate and you're forcing people to try to hit her and she's got that, you know, nullify guaranteed hit for a couple turns, you can do some fun stuff. So I know there's a lot of creativity that goes into hate bestowal, and obviously we're just talking about the fire element. Theoretically, you know, we've seen Sadali thrown at some other teams, hybrid teams, where that's been a game changer as well. I don't know if it's necessarily going to be the same for Kefka, if only because it has to move directly next to the teammate, so it's slightly less flexible than Sadali with kind of some of that range forgiveness. But overall, you know, I think Kefka does bring some good utility. I don't know how to feel about the limit break yet in particular. I like the confusion. I think the only downside you get though is it's kind of some RNG relatedness, where if you confuse a team and then you have a teammate follow up and hit them, the confusion's gone, right? So it's not one of those perma status ailments. But I agree, in a game right now where I hate to say it, but like chaos is king. Like you have like random CT ups and random counter chances with reduction all over the place. It's like way more randomness than ever in the game, that I could certainly see an AoE limit break like that. And I do think he prioritizes it second, where his highest damage is going to be the Imperil that magic res 25% down. So I think AI-wise, it would do that massive Imperil first, then the limit break second, which would be pretty devastating because, again, just way more damage and then to confuse people to end the fight. I think there's upside there. I'm hesitant nowadays with how expensive Vizior is to be really excited because I don't want to like mislead, if you know what I'm saying. And I've whiffed on enough grades.
I think he also has potential, like in the rainbow perspective, like that. His Imperil is a magic resist Imperil, and then his other one is a spirit Imperil. So both things that would fit very well into with other mages or with other glove units. So I think that his kit does lend itself well there too.
You guys make some really good points for sure. I do think the hate mechanic is a really cool, unique thing. I just like anytime they add something that's kind of new to the game. So
especially whereas it kind of adds it to two different units, which is you kind of you think about the celebratory Jaden that's came out in JP, and kind of his whole new power creep is that he has that single target, bring hate down to 0, which includes that innate hate. So Kefka giving it to a couple different units is a way to kind of counteract that unit potentially.
Either way, we've seen more than ever hate play is not as traditional as it has been, where you just have a tank pop it and then it's done, or even have a tank innate pop it and then it's done, because a lot of those tanks that have it innately don't have ways to regen it. But you have like hate down, and obviously one of the items we're going to talk about in a second here further as hate down, TMRs have it. So there's there's some stuff to play with from an auto perspective. Obviously, it doesn't have nearly the same benefit for manual PvP, which I'm shocked you to bring up JP for the applications of Kefka in manual. But
I mean, yes. I think he's okay in manual. The one thing that really hurts him is his lack of accuracy, which, I mean, he does have some ways around that. He has like a really potent sleep effect that he can use that gets up to a really high chance to sleep. And when you're asleep, like, you can't evade at all. Your evade goes to 0. Then from Arithmetician, he does have level 3 disable, which is another one that has a higher than normal chance to proc off. So, depending on which sub job you're using there, he's got some kind of sneaky ways to kind of go against evade. So I think he's a decent manual unit, just maybe not like a top tier choice.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. All right, cool. Well, any other closing thoughts on Kefka? Are we ready to talk about the new introduction of more lost reliquiaries?
Not for me. I'm excited about some of the items.
Yeah, it's for sure. So we haven't talked about this yet on the channel, surprisingly. I don't know how we haven't. Two of the best items that came out were already the Genji glove and the blood sword, and that's a permanent new game content that's in here. It's basically kind of like Tower, where you proceed through towers, but you only get one run allowed, only 2 teams. There's fortunately some really good guides out there. I've even seen on a guide that's basically like an auto-only guide, so it's not impossible, provided you have the right units. It's definitely end-game content for many. But they are pushing forward to extra ones here. We'll talk about all 4 in the context, but they're releasing Youichi's bow and the Murasame ninja blade, which is way ahead of schedule as well. Have you guys used either Genji glove or blood sword so far with any positive results?
Genji glove has become my new, like, I use it in almost every single build now. I think it's that good. And I think out of all the items that we're going to get from this type of content, it may be the best one, if not in the top, 2 or 3. So very, very nice item. The blood sword, I think, is up there too. It's just a little bit more niche in its application. The thing that I like about Genji glove is it's an accessory. Anybody can use it. The amplification of damage that it does is on attack and magic, both a flat 10%. And that amplification is a final damage modifier. So whatever damage you were going to do initially, just add 10% to it. It's very, very powerful.
Yeah, I mean, the Genji glove just in general is super, super strong. I agree everything on that. I think the blood sword is the more fun item, but Genji glove's probably just stronger. I kind of said this earlier, but the blood sword, I think you can have kind of one of 2 applications. One for somebody who's just like a major DPS with a big old AoE. I mean, if you're able to hit the entire team, you might actually heal like a decent amount back. And then the other one is pretty much for some sort of tank who has, some sort of draining ability, either, a Dario, a Mont, a Freyevia, somebody is with one of those like HP absorb skills. You kind of stack that on top of it. And then the healing power, if you have healing power, trust stones or whatever, or a defense spirit set, whatever, that takes place after all of those modifiers have already hit. So healing power is even more effective when you stack that on top. I just kind of messed around one time with Dario in some arena. Obviously, it's going to be more effective if you can do a lot of damage. But my draining seal did about 3,200, and I was healing for like 4,500. And I was like, this is kind of bananas. So it's a fun weapon. I'm not entirely sure if it's actually really good, but it's fun for sure.
I'm with you. I've had some good results. So my big tinker this week was Reagan with the Blood Sword, because Reagan's got the innate 20 healing power that you throw in a Trust Stone passive, throw on a defense set, and the amount of damage he does, that 15%, it goes up to near 30% drain on every single ability. So I've had some fun with that. I agree. It's probably in the broad scheme of what you can put on a tank, maybe not as optimal for bulk. But then again, if you don't need the bulk, if you can just replenish the health that you would have blocked anyway, if you know what I mean. So we're consistently getting to a game now where you can't just like resist everything. There comes a certain point where people just penetrate it. So I love your suggestion of throwing on. I know like Celes, we'll talk about soon, is one of those tanks that gets some healing power here. So you throw it on her. Obviously the magic stat's not as high as a attack stat, but I think even for someone like SR Leela, we ran at Limited Guild War this week, with the idea being that giant AoE, you're just going to naturally regen some health, and every little bit helps. So I do agree with that. But also good, the Genji glove, that's probably the best damage thing to come out here. I love, it sounds stupid, but the paralyze and toad resistance, I actually low-key love they just randomly threw him in there. That obviously makes Halloween Lucia even less of a threat than she already was with some of the trust stones you could possibly put on. But that 10% extra damage at the end is such a huge damage increase that it basically exceeds almost anything you would do for modifier increases or imperils or anything. It sounds small, but I really should do some extra math on like quantifying it, but it's very important.
And also just the simple fact that it's not something you can build on a trust stone. I don't know if that's kind of what you're saying, but you can't just replace it on your trust stone gear. You've probably already got all these different modifiers set up. And this is something you can slap on anybody that they probably don't, have that anywhere else.
I would agree. Yep.
It's instantly a best in slot PvE item as well, like for guild raids and trials and things. 2,000 max damage increase, which is the highest we've seen on any item so far. Another reason to love it.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, and the two new ones are the Youichi bow and the Murasame ninja blades. So just kind of recapping for those about the bow, we'll talk about that one first. The three attributes on it, again, one of those items that's both attack and magic, so Rosa fans rejoice. It's got the decreased chance of being targeted of 8 to self, which is pretty sizable in my opinion. Missile attack 20 and accuracy of 20, which you love to see. Overall, I mean, and any quick thoughts about the Youichi bow from either of you?
Yeah, so you kind of mentioned the magic stat and stuff like that, but obviously Rosa, somebody like Fina or something like that. Those are the types of characters that come to mind, at least for me anyway, just because the fact of we've seen with, supports like Resnick or something, having hate down is a massive advantage because you can just kind of sit back and heal and stuff like that. Obviously, Fina and Rosa are quite dated and not the strongest units at the time, but who knows, if we get a unit who can utilize this better, I think it's a really interesting piece of gear. Because not every hate down is hard to come by. I don't know. And otherwise, you pretty much have to use like a TMR Pern in order to get that. And you don't always want to do that.
I love that it has the accuracy 20 in the passive slot there. Because that essentially means you don't need to bring something like Alex Ring, which also has that same benefit. So here you could, if it was like on a magic unit, another thing I like about it, these items is that they are equally as good for physical or magical units. Give or take, depending on some of the base stats. But, you could pair this with the spectacles and then get that big 39 accuracy in the base stats and then have this in the passive slot. So super cool. I like the hate down there that you were mentioning. Another way that you could potentially get around Jaden in the future and his attack is, okay, he's going to reduce my tank to 0, but I have this character now with the bow that has -8, so they're still going to target my tank. So
yep.
I think that when I first saw this item, kind of before Jaden came into the game, it wasn't quite as interesting, but it's getting more interesting, and I think hate down in general is going to be important in the future.
Actually, yeah, I wanted to expand upon that. The hate down, in my personal opinion, I feel like I have a good case for this. A hate down is way more important and way better than hate up. Now, not necessarily innate hate, but in terms of buffs, because, again, everyone knows this by this point, you can dispel buffs that have hate generation on them. But by the nature of you having negative hate means you're not going to be getting targeted by anybody in the first place. So this obviously is a bestowed effect, so you start the battle with it. But for something like the Sorrow TMR, which is a hate reduction, the nice thing about that negative hate is it's essentially the same thing as your tank buffing for 4 hate, as opposed to you going negative 4 hate. Like, in the end of the day, it's really just a pecking order of like what's the highest number to lowest number. So by the fact that you reduce your hate, you implicitly give your tank 4 4 hate by you going down 4, and they're not going to attack you to dispel your hate down because you're less in the pecking order. Now, I think this is a great item for those archers that we typically throw the producer's bow tie on them to stymie their movement, drop them down to move 2. Well, the one slight downside with that is it has hate on the bow tie, which sometimes is really great for making sure you have someone to kind of like dictate enemy movement. But then again, once the enemy gets really close, they're typically the first one to get hit because they still have that remaining 2 hate. I feel like this is a really interesting item to pair with it. Now, you lose the benefit of being able to dictate enemy movement, but you can still throw the bow tie and this, get that hate -6, and still retain that lack of movement. So I think there's some creative stuff to be done there.
Yeah, I just love the creativity of being able to do stuff like this. I actually really enjoy that they're, adding these creative weapons to the game. I just feel like it gives you a lot more options in team building.
I love that Slime can use it too.
Oh my
that's
god.
a good one.
He can with everything. It's a good one for him. Yeah.
Holy
That's a
cow,
really
I didn't
good
even
one.
think about that. Yeah, that's
Right.
awesome.
Well, because again, Slime is quite routinely one that will have bow tie for me because I want him to hang back toward the back, and all of a sudden throw this on there too. Like, perfect. And I don't think these items are OP either. The Genji glove is kind of in its own realm, but I really do think there's a nice balance here typically of what they offer for like stats and just like the box stats where they're not like oppressive. Like 20 missile attack is not oppressive. Like there's plenty of weapons that have close to that with the penetration and whatnot. So you also give up some trust stone versatility sometimes, but anyway, that's enough of the Youichi bow. We also have the Murasame Ninja Blade coming out. And this one, again, for those that haven't seen it, it's a Ninja Blade that when you critical hit an enemy, you will gain 15 evade. I don't know if it's limited to time, though. It doesn't seem to have a number of turns applied to this. I don't know if it's just for that turn or not. Actually, do you guys know that answer? Do you know how long that evade lasts for?
I'm not sure. I would assume that it's 3 turns, but I don't know.
I don't know either. I was going to ask, is this 100% confirmed that it's on critical hit? Because I don't remember if it was the Genji glove, but there was a different piece of equipment that recently came out on Motive Calc that said, I think it was the Blood Sword actually. It said on critical hit, but that's actually not true, and it's just always.
Yeah,
I don't know if they
exactly.
changed that, but that's how it showed up originally.
That's a really good thing to point out, so we won't mislead. So either way, the concept is you hit something and get 15 evade, and then there's also reaction block 40, critical rate 20. I mean, obviously, I love the extra 15 evade. There are a lot of accurate units nowadays. There's less toxic evade metas now than there were historically. They still exist, obviously, don't get me wrong. But I just love that this is an extra source of evasion that you can't get from trust stones or vision cards or whatever. It stacks with buffs, it stacks with, a whole bunch of stuff. But yeah, any thoughts on this immediately?
So I think that it probably is tied into that critical hit just because the item itself is really kind of built around critting. Like it has the high base crit and then the crit passive of 20. So it probably, works that way. But the thing that I like about it is that, these 3-turn evade buffs that the evade units put on, during the mid-fight, those are wearing off. And you generally see that if the enemy team can make the battle last long enough, those evade units are getting easier to hit as the battle goes on. So this is one way to kind of counteract that a little bit and kind of keep a little bit more evade up during the mid-fight.
Somebody who almost never runs evade, I don't like this piece of equipment. We can get rid of it. No, it's cool though. I like you said, anytime they add some sort of unique effect that is not somewhere else, I typically enjoy that they did that just because I enjoy diverse, builds and stuff like that and toying around with stuff, experimenting with things, even if it's not actually good. I enjoy using it. So, but no, I think this actually has a place and could be very legit.
That's one thing they've been doing with all these legendary reliquary equipment. It's all much different, in terms of the effects, versus what we have in the game right now. So each item has kind of a unique effect, which is really cool.
Particularly cool when you don't know when you're attacking someone if they're going to have it or not. Obviously, Arena, you can see that, but for Guild War, you could go up against one character that has one of these equipped and one that doesn't, and get two potentially totally different results. Yeah, it's a nice X factor for sure.
And Slime can wear it.
And slime. I have yet to hear the.
This one probably not as relevant.
Yeah, the evasion slide. I haven't heard that one yet. Well, maybe that'll come out later.
Not sure how often he's attacking anyone and critting either.
Yeah, that's right. He'll look cool while wearing it, I guess. But regardless, in terms of other news, I know we kind of ahead of time didn't have much to say on it, but we are getting a bunch of +6 upgrades to the Final Fantasy VI items. All 3: Locke's Dagger, Terra's Sword, Celes's Sword. I'll spare you guys the trouble. None of us are terribly impressed with those weapons. Even before the +6, we've never really used them. And none of these really do anything to give an incentive to equip them otherwise. So they're coming. If you haven't farmed one yet, get a copy anyway. It's nice to have a copy of one of everything. But I don't think any of these are going to be changing anything at all. So we'll honorable mention, but move on to the next. which is technically a new item that's coming. It's an accessory. It's the Pendant of Light, which is a Warrior of Crystal centric accessory. And you have both a shield and barrier version of it. And then it's essentially a reaction block 30 and AoE resistance of 8 for all the Warriors of Crystals, and an acquired AP buff of 25%. I think it's kind of interesting they're making a War of the Crystal unique item. I don't know if it's terribly impactful on its own. Have you guys looked at this closer at all or no?
I mean, I like it. It's not game breaking or anything, but anytime you can catch AoE resistance on something, I enjoy it. There's so little pieces of equipment that have that in the game, and some are tied to specific jobs. Like there's I don't remember the name of it, but there's that shadowy cloak or whatever, it's for some of the evasion units. Otherwise, obviously, there's Brigandine, and then there's like a strike weapon, but a lot of them are tied to specific things. And the fact that, I mean, obviously this is very specific too. It's just Crystal Warriors, but I don't know, just another piece of equipment that gives AoE resist is not for nothing.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that, especially when you look at some of the units that can use that, like Satya or Ranan, Velis. None of them have access to that Brigandine for the area resist. Same thing with like Perrine. So they've always been limited just to that unit resistance on like Survival Vest or on Pod. So I think that's a really nice upgrade for them. The acquired AP being thrown in there at the 25% is pretty good too. I actually, for Jeume, I kind of like this in the future when I finally finish my Platinum Armor, because I am kind of getting towards the end of that. I only need 4 more recipes, and I'll finally be able to get a +6 version of that. So
you're ready for the strike meta,
right?
Doesn't that give a ton of strike resist along with the unit resist?
Yeah.
It's a good one.
Nice.
I'm like mad now that I've been farming the Hermes sandals the whole time.
Well, those are good too.
They are just not as applicable. Yeah. Either way, I think this is a good item. I think only a handful of units really would benefit. Again, process elimination. Anyone that can with the Brigandine, I think the Brigandine is superior than this. The acquired AP 25% is fine from like a Trust Stone management, but the actual Trust Stone passive is acquired AP 20%. I don't know if that 5% is enough to really incentivize to use it. It's kind of just a nice value add. It's the reaction block rate of 30 is cool too, but I know a lot of these units aren't getting them as part of their upgrade. So there's only a couple that I think it shines on. But I think you hit the nail on the head with who it is. Really, Rugia, Satya, and probably Renan. I would agree, Velis, maybe. But yeah. Either way, honorable mention of that, which brings us to next to an area that there's a lot to talk about. We'll see how we can condense this. It's the MA2s and the Transcendences of all the characters, and I think there's 7 in total. Obviously, all the Final Fantasy VI characters, but majority of the Warrior of Crystals also getting their upgrades finally as well. Is there any unit that sticks out to either of you that you want to start off first with here?
Me personally, I think a handful of them got good ones. Not necessarily because it's just the best overall, but because he has free materials as Lucio. I mean, we've seen like just being able to pour reincarnations into somebody and get all those extra stats can be pretty nice. And the fact that Lucio can kind of just do that without having to have the, typical UR scrolls is really nice. And obviously just as his MA2 and Transcendence, like he got some pretty nice stuff as well.
Yeah, I 100% agree about Lucio. The best 80 cost unit in the game currently, and he's going to be able to compete and go toe for toe with 100 cost units, once he gets, if you grind out and kind of max him out, his stats are going to be insane. I think that the upgrades that they actually gave him in terms of amping up his damage and some of his resistances, they even addressed some of his AP issues, with the AP consumption, gave him even some AoE resistance. And then they upgrade his Job 25 skill, gives him some additional penetration on a large diamond AoE. I think that skill is actually kind of underrated with the bravery break on there of 30.
Yep.
It's a pretty significant damage loss to physical damage dealers, going from 97 down to 67. So yeah, really good unit.
I don't know, doing some quick math or whatever, but I remembered because for our draft league I had Severo, and he has a big bravery down skill like for the other team, and it drops by 40. And I remember doing the math, it was right around a 30-ish% decrease in damage. So 30 bravery, it's probably 23% damage increase, which is fairly substantial.
Yep. I would completely agree. I love it's one of my favorite things about Jeume, that character with the AoE bravery down, that it's such a big damage nerf. I mean, we talk about the counter chance, that's nice too, but it's really the damage, and it's sizable for certain. You brought up a great point, KSaun, that he is the 100% free grindable max reincarnation unit. Two thumbs up, recommend almost anyone to do it. I do think he could be a future potential staple of a bunch of light teams, particularly as a lot of those light units have kind of like subsided to the wayside. He does have an interesting niche in what he can bring to that dark matchup as well. I know part of his upgrade, he's getting more dark resistance of 20%. He's also got it on a buff. there's a lot to like about him in that matchup. That when you reincarnate him, absolutely a threat.
Can he officially nullify dark with this upgrade? Because I know he could get pretty absurd levels of dark resistance if you stacked like everything you wanted on him.
That's a good question.
There's kind of a cap that you get to like prior to Esper's, but he can get there, and he I think with the additional 20% and then his in battle buff, he should be able to nullify. I was going to say though that when you think about him going into dark, and them also being able to stack up a lot of light resist, Sephiroth that notably can get quite a bit. The great thing about Lucio is his limit burst is that AoE light and peril of 38%. So even if they are stacking up 30, 40, 50% light resist, he may be able to catch a couple of units in that AoE and bring that right down to a more manageable level.
And I'm gonna make a bold prediction right now. I do think Lucio can get to 100. And for those that aren't aware of the mechanic of how that works, in game there's kind of this hidden cap to how much you can get of any resistance, whether it's element or weapon or who knows what. And the only way you can kind of surpass getting to 100% if you start at negative is if it's in your like mastery ability, or if it's in your Transcendence, or even necessarily a passive. It's one of the reasons why Noctis can get up to 100% lightning res, and someone like Summer Elsorel can get up to 100% fire res. It's because as part of the MA2s, they've gotten these elemental percentage buffs where normally characters that started at a negative usually can't exceed 100 to ever get up to 100. So he is unique in that I think you can. I don't know if I said that articulately, but we'll find out.
It made sense to me.
Yeah. Regardless, there's a bunch of other units here. I guess we can kind of start just on Final Fantasy VI between Locke, Terra, and Celes. I know Terra has been kind of silent the past year and a half. Locke and Celes really stealing the limelight. Any of those three, any promise going forward here for you guys?
I like Celes's upgrades. I think that she gets a good amount of like HP and resistances added in. The unit resistance I think is nice too on the Dream ability. Like you mentioned earlier, the healing power, and that kind of ties in now with her. I think it was on her. Was it her magic burst ability? Kind of gives the absorption,
correct.
So I think that's actually really nice, especially combining that with the blood sword that we just looked at. I'm a fan of Celes for sure.
Huge upgrade. I completely agree. Yep.
I think it gives her enough that she's not going to be like that same dominant tank like she was when she first released, but I think it's enough that she's at least in the conversation that she's fallen off in a big way over the past like 6 to 8 months. I think that she's going to be in a place where she's going to be very usable again, especially if we start leaning more towards magic. Obviously that's more her wheelhouse. That's part of the main reason she has fallen off, is because it's been such a physically dominant for a while now.
Yeah, totally agree. I don't have much to add. The healing power 20 is huge. Again, not only for the self-absorption, but quite often there are times where I'll run her with her sub-job that has the Cura ability on and let her kind of like Freyevia in the essence, just be a tank, meat shield, but have some Cure potential. And so for her to now have that healing power for that Cura as well, I do like a lot. So oftentimes she just become a heal bot, which is okay. Sometimes that's all you need. But 20% at minimum here certainly helps a lot.
Cool. Yeah, I agree with everything there.
Yeah.
In terms of Locke, I don't think it's that great of an upgrade. Probably the best thing that he gets is that his re-raise ability, he gets a second cast of that. So, but I mean, his evasion, it's still good. Like it's still one of the better ones. But re-raise is just, it's too easily dispelled now. And if he gets caught, especially by Sephiroth and his LB, he's just one shot and done.
There's also just ridiculous amounts of guaranteed hits in the game too, which is the main reason why I feel like Yuffie is such a problem, because you can't just do that. You can't just basically cheat the system. You're like, oh, I got this 100% hit, moving my kit. No, you have to legitimately be a very accurate unit. Otherwise, for 3 turns, you basically can't touch her.
Yeah, for light in particular, I have tempered expectations for what they have for evasion. I think that time is kind of gone. I still think it's still strong in itself, where you're going to see a very balanced game, and we are even now. There's a lot of elements that are very strong. So Sephiroth's not going to be everywhere all the time. But again, that's also speaking from like a high end perspective. From what we're seeing in our meta reviews week in and week out, Sephiroth is still the most dominant character across the entire ladder. So when you are speaking to like a more general player base, yeah, this does basically nothing for Locke, because that matchup versus Sephiroth, he's still going to most likely just get one shot and dominated. This does nothing to really stop that. Then I'll briefly talk about Terra. I mean, Terra unfortunately has always underwhelmed. She had this, I don't want to call it a niche, but one of the few very bulky tanks that first came out, where she had this like physical shield, she had the courage potential. She was one of those characters that was just kind of like do damage and don't die. Obviously she came in with some like magic scaling slash attacks, which is really cool, and also some just regular magic attacks were really cool too. her meltdown ability was a great global upgrade, but never really came to fruition. I don't think anything here really is either, particularly when you have those options of, let's say, Roy and Kefka that come into the forefront. But even you're talking like Regal Glaciella, I think there are other fire magic units that Terra just doesn't really get the job done, unfortunately.
Yeah, especially with so many barrier breaks in the game. Like the changing the barrier to general is cool, but like ultimately, what does it do for you? I would have loved to see like maybe like a heal back or something along with it, like just as like a little bit of added HP or something, because she is pretty underwhelming and has been for a while. So.
Yep.
It's disappointing that they invested a couple of her upgrades into like AP management, which granted she can use it. Like she's one of the mages that starts at 50%. So maybe sometimes like in a second guild battle or something like for multi-rounds, AP can start getting a little dicey. But I just think that there's other areas that she needed a little bit more. I do like the increased area resistance. She gets up to 20 innate, which is pretty nice. Like she still has a lot of HP. Like she's still kind of a general bruiser where she's kind of decently good against both physical and magical. So I think that she's still, in a place where you can use her. Is she a meta unit? Actually, pretty far from it. So.
And then the other warrior of the Crystal Warriors we have left are Jeume, Velis, and Astrius. And I'll kick things off here with Jeume, if you don't mind. I'm a big Jeume fan, always have been. Really nice in what she's getting for her MA2 here, where it's attack 20%, which, she's kind of that first blended tank where it really was this good blend of like damage output as well as survivability. So I like that they're kind of adding some of that. But in addition to that, more importantly, they're giving her a slash res pen of 40 if Protect and Shell, or either Protect or Shell is active, which I think is really important because there's a lot of Protect dispel, there's a lot of Shell dispel, that even if you dispel the Protect, it's still active. I think it just, nice protection from that, where she does Stormwind Rend and can potentially do a lot of damage. She's got defense pen on one of her buffs. Her Transcendence giving her unit res of 10, some element chain resistance, and that Stormwind Rend, which is her bread and butter, is also getting 100% counter reduction in that giant AoE. So there's just like a lot of good utility over there, and they are, I think, giving her appropriate damage increase buffs that at least trying to keep her consistent with other tanks. So yeah, I give that a thumbs up.
I like it quite a bit too. That the storm and rend ability, I think, is one of the things I like the most about it, because when you think about some of the top units out there you might be sending her into, Sephiroth and Bradley, shutting off their counters is huge loss in their damage for those first few turns if they can scintilla or kind of do those preemptive counters. So like that quite a bit.
Not only that, but the reflexes and stuff too. I mean, they have like multiple just ridiculously good counters and stuff like that. Obviously the reflex isn't as high a percent chance of proccing or whatever, but still really nice.
Yeah.
One unit I'll mention real quick is just Astrius. Obviously, I mean, he's still a really good unit. We don't see him all the time, but he's still really solid. But with the upgrades, I don't know if he necessarily needed slash pen, but he got it. So he's going to do even more damage to everybody. I love the 15% all elemental resist on Courage though. That's a pretty nice upgrade for just resisting damage. I don't know how much it'll matter in terms of like, will it allow him to live one more hit? Maybe it will. But 15% is pretty nice.
I actually think it will. I think that's sizable, and there's some good counterplay. If you remove courage, you lose that. So there's counterplay for how strong it is. Yeah, for sure.
Also the 200 CT restore too, I didn't even mention, but that's also pretty crazy. Cross Destruction's a very, very unique ability. It's the only ability in the game with that kind of hitbox where you can hit it just really, really absurd angles. But we've seen with Bradley, some of that CT recovery can be really, really nice in fights. So I like that as well.
Yeah, doesn't it work out that it's like basically an effective range of 7 with that skill? I'm pretty sure that's on the diagonal. So. Like it's weird how you have to send it, but I like the additional accuracy that he's picking up too in the dream ability. Astrius, he's already a very good counter against fire evade. He can be built, really, really accurate. Sometimes if the chains kind of fall right, just being accurate isn't enough. Even if you're a water unit, the chains can kind of win the game for them. So this might allow you to put in a piece of armor or maybe a water ring or something else instead, and kind of still be accurate enough to hit them. So nice upgrade.
Definitely. And the slash res pen, just kind of highlighting KSaun's comment, because it is big. On his MA2, he gets slash res pen of 30, and then on an ability, he'll gain, on that defense break ability, he'll get another 40 for 3 turns. So already 70 slash res pen just from those alone. The one thing I really appreciate from that is that water does seem to kind of be going away from heavy slashers, where there is a slash res pen water card, right? This at least allows Astrius to be way more self-sufficient and not have to worry about having that vision card in like the main slot or sub slot. And I know that, his slash res pen was already a question when he was released. That was kind of that, they brought out the katana for it, and it was never really like that high. You could still build up good slash res. So the fact that kind of addressing that weakness and allowing him to be more self-sufficient in a more like hybrid water team, I think is some good value compared to where he is right now and in what you have to do to get him there.
That's a really good point with the VC. In my head, I just always like pictured the VC being equipped and adding that much slash res.
Right.
So
you needed
having the freedom to not do it, actually could be pretty massive.
I think Astrius's main issue, and it's kind of always been his main issue, and even more so now with the elemental resistance there, it's that so much of his power is tied into courage that if either courage is popped or, somebody just dispels it, he's much less powerful, right off the bat. He loses all of his defense penetration. Now he's going to lose his elemental resist, his AP consumption. So that's definitely his Achilles heel, and it's much easier to expose now than ever. So got to kind of temper your expectations. Despite being very, very nice upgrades, there is a very defined way to get to him and kind of knock him down a peg.
Definitely. And he's been one of those units that always you have that crossroads where you have to usually disable that teammate buff, despite the fact that it's amazing. His teammate buff is so good for what it does to increase teammate HP. That's part of his health regeneration, that he's able to regen health on attacks. The slash res that it gives, like, that's such a good buff. But if you're at risk of using it twice and not using your courage, Astrius is worthless without the courage. So yeah, very much disproportionate. But that being said, there's a lot of characters that I feel like you could say that, where if you removed their courage buffs or their re-raise buffs, significantly changes them. So, good balance. And then lastly, JB, you want to talk about Velis at all here?
So Velis gets a great upgrade here. He's getting in his MA2 some additional area resistance and also some magic attack. So kind of giving him a mix between both being tanky and being able to do some damage. He also is getting in his dream abilities some additional cast time reduction. So he already had 300. It's gonna put him at 600. So 60% cast reduction. That's perfect for snow healing because that's a 400 cast speed spell innately. So he's just right off the bat, he's going to be able to one tick that. Today we had to use his vision card in order to and then also his speed cast passive. Yep. He had to have both of those in order to get there. So not being tied into that build or that vision card is a nice upgrade. He can now slot in whatever card he wants and get out those timely heals. So
and a whole new passive. That's a huge huge jump in power in my opinion, where you don't have to have that cast time down passive anymore. He's a lot of other good ones.
Exactly.
And like you said, not running the BC, notoriously a unit who is like a splash unit running with tons of different elements. It's not like he's always just been a straight ice unit. So I think even his heyday was with water, but he's still awesome.
He does get the upgrade on his snow healing buff as well, which is going to add a 25% agility buff for one turn. So that's very interesting. Like, I think it's easy to kind of look at the one turn and think, oh, that's not going to be that impactful. But oftentimes, like, Velis is pumping this out, consecutively over multiple turns. He just keeps spamming it. So as long as he has this spell up and people are taking damage, you're going to have that buff on. So pretty cool.
Absolutely. Big fan. I'll be honest, I'm probably awakening all of the units to Transcend if I can. Astrius might get left off, and I'm sorry, the Final Fantasy 6 units, probably only Celes, but the Warriors, the Crystal, yeah, there's a good case to be investing some antlers in them.
I'm so low on antlers. I really hope that Gumi has some in the events this week to help us out, because I feel like most people are probably dried out or close to drying out at this point.
Definitely.
Yeah, I'm low on everything, including antlers.
Yep, definitely. Well, good. All right, so we'll segue then to our War Room segment, which is a little bit more about map analysis, meta snapshots. There's not as much going on currently because we are in the midst of Limited Guild War. Class match did end a couple days ago, but we'll talk briefly about Limited Guild War first. Today is the last day of it. Have you guys had a good experience Limited Guild War this time around? What they had for restrictions, the map and whatnot?
I've liked it so far. I mean, my guild has had some tough luck. We're trying to we're vying for like a top 3 position, but one of the guilds that's in the top 3 has somehow dodged like the other guilds, including us, the whole time, and we expected to get them today. It didn't happen, and it's kind of ruining our chance now to get that spot. So, but yeah, it's a cool map. I've played around with a bunch of different teams. I've played wind, I've played light, played strike teams. Like there's a lot of, the meta is very very vibrant at the moment. I think there's a lot of counterplay amongst the different teams and composition. So it's very interesting now.
I'll hear that.
I'll be honest, the amount of effort that I put into my guild battle team compared to like my draft league teams are pretty drastically different. I enjoy guild battle. I normally just run one of my lightning teams that I want to run. Limited battle, I've just been throwing in Naya because I think she's absolutely bananas at 40 cost. I've been running with Skahal and Lightning just because there are a couple of units that I like a lot. Where our guild is, I think we're top 100, but I don't remember what rank. But we still see a lot of dark. One day we saw a straight wind wall, which was interesting. But we see a lot of Sephiroth, and for the most part, I feel like Lemure is the biggest thing I see comboed with him. Just hastening, quickening, and all that stuff. So it went okay, but
Yeah.
I think a wind wall is actually not a bad play because a lot of people are running Bradley at the moment on attack,
Yep.
and wind performs well against dark also. So there's not a lot of people, or at least not as many people these days are running ice on attack. So
Yep.
it's not a bad play.
Yeah, no, same. We've been running basically an Earth Wall for the majority of all of it. We just swapped up to Dark to end these last few days. And yeah, the Limited Guild War, this was a great map in my opinion. I do like it a lot. I feel bad sometimes though, just because there is a lot of disparity between the top ranked guilds getting thrown in with some of the lower ranked guilds. I know it's kind of disheartening sometimes to see those matchups. I mean, just today is kind of like a cherry on top to end it. We kind of did a speed run to see how fast we could clear 90 stars, and we did it in 12 minutes against the enemy guild. So whoever logged in saw night. Like, I still appreciate it for what it does for cost limited stuff, but I wish there was something they could do to kind of add some balance, just because it's easy to take your foot off the pedal for this because it's not always as challenging as regular guild war because you're not in that same bracket as normal. Scouting's a little bit different, but yeah.
Well, that's what they do with the supremacy events, right? But
right.
those are like every few months rather than
Yep.
every month.
Yeah, I do still enjoy the limited guild battles a lot more than regular guild battles, at least for the most part. I just think you can get a little more creative and stuff. You see some different stuff.
I'm with it.
Plus, there's some Visior on the line. It's always nice to get 1 or 2K or whatever it is at the end of the week.
Same. Anytime they can throw a cost limit on stuff, I'm a fan. That's one of my favorite things about the draft league, quite honestly, and looking forward to talking about that still as we tick down. It's literally just because you get these characters you never get to use, and Gumi's done a really good job balancing their lower rarity characters, and it's just fun to get creative in ways that aren't just meta over and over and over, if you know what I mean. Well, on that topic too, of going for the top, if you will, Arena limited title is active as of today. Reagan and Stern are the bonus units, and Dark Bahamut and the Reagan vision card are the bonus vision cards. I'm not surprised, but I'm slightly surprised they kept Stern for the top tier bonus. I know sometimes they drop them down a week later, but obviously not everyone out of Reagan, so an incentive to make everyone play, they obviously enabled Stern, which, I feel like more and more people finally have ready a couple weeks later here now. You guys have any plans for it this time around?
I'm not going to go too hard. I'll probably try for top 100, maybe, but nothing more than that.
Yeah, I'll probably try and go for top 1,000. I might end up getting lazy and just do a top 5,000 for the 500 viz or whatever it is.
Yep.
As long as I cash in some viz, that's all I really want. I'm not going to do a title chase. So
the title weeks are always much sweatier. So even like making top 1K or which is generally you can do it with a few pots over the course of the week. That's not happening this week.
Realistically, I don't have the bonus units fully built either way, so like the chances of that happening are not high. I'll save my pots for a unit that I build right away and go for it then.
No, I have no intentions to compete. I'll probably end up around top 100 just because. I will for the middle of the week, and even toward the end of the week, though, we'll likely try to go closer to top 10, if only because one of my favorite things about this week is when you have something like Arena and seeing the top 10, I don't think most people understand just how creative the top 10 has to be. It's because you can't just pick a team and farm off them. You have to actually make a team that can beat 80% of what you have, and even if that doesn't, you need to have like 2 and 3 and 4 backup teams ready to go, so that by the end of the week you have people completely caught off guard and don't know how to fight you. Because of the bonus units here, I think this is one of my favorite ways to learn more about characters, is seeing how other people stress test them in the top 10. So I'm super intrigued to see what people can do with the new Stern, with Reagan's vision card, what kind of light and dark synergies they have with Dark Bahamut, because obviously dark and light get used frequently enough. I'm very excited to see what people in the top 10 are using to like stress test these units.
Anybody in Visipur going for it?
I don't know if we've confirmed people going, like I'm going for number 1, but we have a lot of people that are like, yeah, just like grinding like top 10, top 30 at the moment.
Interested to hear how it goes.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, I think everyone's usually like that. They start out pretty casual, like, yeah, I'll just dabble and rank up. And then once it's like a real, reality, then they're like, all right, now I'm digging in.
Invested.
Yep. So good. All right. Well, then our third section here, we'll move quickly along, is our Leonis spy report. And we are keeping it limited. I know we got the announcement for the new Alaya Lightning Strike unit, but with details still somewhat vague, we'll keep it to what we know 100%, and that's Dark Shiva and the Esper and Vision card that she came with. So the Dark Shiva Vision card is like Dark Odin, a water and ice synergy, which is kind of interesting, just considering that they haven't gone all the way around the element wheel yet. It's kind of soon to bring out those two. But then again, Gumi knows what it's doing meta and balance wise, and there's some really good things here for water potential. You guys look at Dark Shiva yet at all?
Yeah, so a second ice and water card is really crazy. I don't know what I was expecting, but I wasn't expecting them to go back to the water ice wheel. But a 15% agility card, so that's obviously a meta card that you like to have in every team. So now you have unit resistance and agility now for ice and water, and Winter Holiday Party you can throw in there as a rainbow card, and you're good to go for an ice water setup. So that's really cool. I like that it's a magic party effect too, because we don't have one for water anywhere in the game.
Yeah.
That Winter Holiday Party in JP is the water 50% magic card over there. So we have kind of a different version of that here. The crit evasion in there, that's cool. That's kind of whatever. I love AoE resistance on the bestowed effect, because I'm thinking, okay, I can throw this on Celes and have her be my tank, stack up the area resistance. I could throw this on Snow or whoever and kind of build up those tanky stats. And then always like the base stats, the luck and dex, that's stuff that I like to see there. So really solid card all around the board.
Yeah, I agree. It kind of fills in some of the holes where, not that there's holes with Dark Odin, but it's obviously the only ice and water one, but it synergizes with it really, really well, I think. And the Esper is really cool. Really unique.
It is. Yeah, I love it. Same things you said. The magic is the big one for me, where water strength is a lot of magic units, at least historically it had been. And even ice nowadays, I know the new Jaden is magic scaling, and there's some Velis, obviously, that just being able to have that magic party for both water and ice. I know ice already has it with, I think, Trembling Hearts vision card. But just extra synergy between these two elements. They're kind of boom or bust with the metas. They're kind of hard to sustain on their own in a mono element synergy. That it's certainly nice to be able to use these two cards and then leverage some of those, universal cards or the job-based cards or who knows what. So big thumbs up for Gumi, even though maybe a little sooner than we expected.
Get those Mediana comps going.
Right. We're going to need that.
We're going to need a few more of those.
A few more. We need
more cards for that.
6 Dark Espers before she's viable again. But the
Esper is really interesting. Like on the board, she has a node that we haven't seen before on any Esper, which is that the flat magic damage increase. So just like on the Genji gloves, this one's only 5%, but still, 5% increased damage. That's probably going to math out to be higher than, if this was like a 15 mod or a 20 mod on on a single skill. And nice that this applies to any type of magic damage, whether it's magic attack or pierce magic attack or slash magic attack. So like you said, they've the ice element has seen Jaden with the pierce, and then they've seen Howlet with the magical slashing. So
that's it. Well, thank you.
Great Esper for any of those units.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's tailor made for the new Jaden for sure. I am curious, and maybe you guys I'm sure have spent more time using them, but I'm just thinking of a couple of like ice missile units or something like that too. With the 10 initial AP is really, really interesting. You could stack that up with like 25 ice attack and a bunch of crit rate. I'm just curious if you can really front load some of that AP without them having to buff stuff up. Obviously, it's a magic based Esper. Anything unique like that with initial AP, I like, and it comes with 19 agility, which is pretty loaded. So.
I didn't consider that.
And the 5 AoE resistance there, like on the path to the ice attacks,
just like Sheraton.
Pretty solid all around.
You know what? I didn't consider it. I see an option for that though. I completely agree. That extra initial AP, the AoE resistance, the ice attack, and then it would probably just be the critical rate or accuracy, which they like as well. I like it. 19 agility here. Yeah.
I mean, you have obviously a couple other options with, I think it's slash and magic resistance too. Obviously slash resistance pretty not important these days.
Yeah.
And there's, starting to get more and more magic penetration, obviously, even with now it looks like more job VCs and stuff like that coming out with it. But overall, I think almost all of the Dark Esper are really, really good, but I like it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's probably my only knock on is it has the slash and magic resistance you can build into. I always prefer to have some elemental resistance in there to build into. I think, it does have the AoE resistance kind of for that additional mitigation, so I can't complain too much.
Good. All right, well, that's it for the Leonis Fireport. That's all we wanted to do to look forward here. We technically do have the Leonis Town Square, which is where we put in some Q&A, but we haven't received many of those yet, so we're going to forego and still compile some of them, ending finally on the big thing we wanted to talk about, and obviously one of the many reasons why we wanted to have KSaun on this week, is his draft league here, where I won't even talk more about that. I'll let you kind of give the high-level summary if you want, how it came to be, what the rules are, literally anything, how you want to set it up?
So one day I was just kind of theory crafting. So for some of the people who watch any of the streams I do, I'm actually into like competitive Pokemon too. And they used to do this thing called, well, one I watched was the WBE. It was basically like a league where you would draft different Pokemon of different tiers and use them against each other in a competitive format. And I was just thinking one day, I was like, well, why couldn't we do, something like that for War of the Visions? There's so many units in the game and so many units that just don't see play. All your MR units, like when's the last time you used Trace? When's the last time you used like Elda? All these random units that you're never going to see ever again. So basically came up with this league where we come up with our own cost format. So not all the units are the same cost as in game. For example, Elda, who is not pretty dated, is 60 costs in our format rather than his typical 80. Bunch of different players draft all of these different units, and then a weekly basis battle against somebody else using those units in like a best of 3 format. Ends up being super fun. So people play against each other, film their videos and send them to me, and then I end up casting all the games and comes out on a weekly basis. So yeah, it's a blast. I'm probably biased. It's the most fun I've had playing the game, like for certain. I think you guys will fall in love with it. Spoiler alert, but you guys are joining the league. But I think you guys will enjoy it. I'm pretty confident.
I'm already enjoying it with
I'm
just
already-
the draft process. So yeah, 100%. It's interesting that you mentioned Pokemon there, because I do feel like the developers of War of the Visions took some inspiration from Pokemon in terms of how they set up, the whole elemental wheel system. And I mean, I think a lot of games have kind of, done similar things in the various card games and things like that. But I do think that they did draw some inspiration from Pokemon.
I agree. No, I'm having a blast. We're in the draft right now. Today is day 1 of it. And just some of the rules to outline the complexities of what it takes to team build here is that you're allowed a team of 220 cost or less. That's number 1. The second thing is it cannot be mono element. You can do either full rainbow or 2 of one element and 1 of another, but cannot be 3 of the same. And then you are limited to who you can pick, where we have our pool of units, right? But you have categorized them into tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3. And so you're only allowed to pick 3 tier 1s, 3 tier 2s, 3 tier 3s. And you have some flex options, but the bottom line being you can't just stack up on a bunch of 100 cost units, A, because of the cost limitations, but B, because you're just not allowed to have, a whole team of them. So it forces you to be very creative. And then obviously the lack of mono element allows you to really kind of like see these characters on their own and not see the meta implications of like all the vision cards and character synergies and whatnot. So it really does force you to get super creative. And just sharing my screen really briefly here, I don't know how well chat can see it, but essentially the cool thing is, so you have these 3 different tiers where you and people that are participating have gone through and reascribed the cost, and I can't emphasize how cool that is, in my opinion. Where characters that we know are either disproportionately good or bad, we've adjusted their cost to be a little more fair and equitable. That there are some steals here that are probably over or underrated, but a lot of them are correctly adjusted, where characters like, let's say, Halloween Lucia at that 70 cost is really performing above that cost, and so you ascribed her a cost of 90 here instead. I think that's a really smart thing to do to kind of like keep that balance.
We've got some exceptions, and ultimately, like I try to have like as democratic of a system as I can. Honestly, this season we now have 40 players. It is harder and harder to do that. I have to kind of just make some executive decisions. But we've kind of over the first couple seasons let the results of the unit dictate their cost going forward. So like when units are played and they're not picking up any wins, there's a good chance that their cost will go down over time, because we're seeing that maybe they're not worthy of that cost tag that they have. Or if one unit is specifically just dumpstering everybody, Naya at 40 cost last season, then she gets moved up to something more reasonable for her. So overall, it's been a lot of fun. Obviously, not every unit is perfectly balanced in that format, and it's not really supposed to be that way. That's part of the whole draft, right? Is like recognizing, hey, maybe this unit is a little stronger than some of the other ones at the same cost. Recognizing that and drafting them, is like a skill as well, and it's a big part of it. So
the drafting is a skill. I know JB and I have kind of been talking about theories of how we approach this, and this is not released yet, so I don't think we'll go crazy with revealing our hand and our strategy. But yeah, there's something to be said. Do you emphasize some of those lower rarity units that give more bang for their buck, or do you go for the more consistent high cost units? I think there's a whole strategy, and obviously try to pick elements that can synergize, but not do 3 of them, only do 2 of them. There's a lot that goes into it.
Well, the tough part is that no matter how much preparation you do and whatever plan you come up with on paper, it can get completely shot out of the water depending on what other people do in the draft room. So, I mean, I'm no stranger to that. Like, I've played fantasy sports since I was a teenager at this point. So Yeah, I love that, the kind of fusion of fantasy sports with War of the Visions here.
Yep.
Big fan.
And I don't think I emphasized that. I just said there's a pool of players, but you pointed out exactly. Once a player or once a character is picked, you cannot pick them again. That's kind of the big wrinkle in that if someone picks Sephiroth, no one else can pick Sephiroth in your pool. So it makes for some interesting stuff. So one of the things I've been perpetually impressed by is the organization of this, where you have like a lot of spreadsheets that have your rules set up, you have the schedule creation of it, you have a live Google Doc where we like update stuff. Do you actually, is it you or do you have help? Do you have a team? Like, are you running this? Who's doing this Excel work and the organization for you?
Yeah, so originally, like, coming up with the cost sheet and like who goes where and all that stuff, I'm the one who basically like compiles the data and stuff like that. Huge shout out to Spike, admin and of the Discord, and also actually my guild leader of Thunder Gods. So huge shout out to Spike. But he helps a tremendous amount with like the Google Sheets and keeping that all organized and syncing up with everybody so that they all have access to the files and stuff like that. He's much better with that than I am. So yeah, I can make some Excel sheets, but he's the one who actually converts that all over and gets access to everybody and codes it in a way where, you know, that it makes sense. Once you pluck a unit out of here, it takes them out of this pool or whatever. So he's a lot better at that kind of stuff. Coming up with the rules doc and all that kind of stuff, that's just me when I have free time. But yeah, and I think the more and more we do it, the easier it is for me to turn that stuff out and get it all smooth and all that. But
Yeah.
So how are you going to deal with the 40-player league and like producing all these videos for it? It seems like you were already kind of maybe getting to an overpoint in season 2.
Yeah.
So seems like you're going to need to make some cuts there.
Yeah, so a couple of changes that I'm going to be making, and it's one of those things. It's like I want to allow as many people that want to play, right? Obviously, there's probably some point where I need to cut that. For this season, we decided it was 40, or at least I decided it was 40. In the past, what I've done is I've casted every single game that has ever been played in the WDL. I can tell you that's not going to happen this season. I might see if anybody else wants to help with anything, but for the most part, my plan is I used to take a decent amount of time on like matchup previews with like a team versus a team, looking at the units that each teams have and kind of breaking down that. I'm probably going to shorten that up to maybe like a match of the week and doing that. And then for the most part, I'm just going to cast like raw game footage, and I'm not going to cast every single game. So I'll figure out my rhythm and the sweet spot and all that. I'm going to try my best to make sure that everybody gets a game casted for each week, but very likely not the whole series, which, you know, for the regular season, every single week is a best of 3, which I think is one of the most fun parts about the league, is because there's a lot of mind games, you know, depending on what you have on your roster and what the other person has. You know, sometimes that can be elementally, you know, if I have both lightning and wind on my team and you have like water and like playing that synergize.
Yep.
Sometimes it's, you know, the damage weakness. Sometimes it's the simple fact that, oh, you have Halloween Lucia and I don't have any physical barrier break. There's a lot of different things that go into it, but I think the best of 3 makes it a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, it's tough to figure out how to edit all that kind of content. I mean, I know editing is like one of the hardest things that we do already as content creators. I can't imagine sifting through all those videos and the length of time. I even know, like, you know, uploading like a 2 or 3 hour video is daunting in itself in the compilation, and, you know, making sure that it's digestible. We have that problem here with the podcast, whereas some nights we're like, you know, we're going a little long in the tooth. But shoot, I mean, it's so entertaining to see how people use this creatively. I'm sure we'll find a way, whether it's like top 10 matchups or, like you said, it'll come out great. I know it will.
Well, with us both in the league, I'm sure we'll be talking about it here from week to week and kind of seeing how each other's games went. So
definitely.
We're not in the same division, so we won't be playing against each other unless we both make the playoffs. But
sorry about that.
No, it's a good thing.
I don't know if you guys are happy about that.
I'm happy about it. I'm terrified. I don't want to play JB. Are you kidding?
Truly, there was quite a bit of thought that I tried to put into it on like sorting the divisions out and stuff like that. First of all, I shuffled the players who've already played over the first 2 seasons based on like some win rates and stuff like that, and tried to keep those pretty comparable throughout the divisions. And then I also wanted an opportunity, like for the content creators, like for the people, like, hey, here's a chance to play against, you know, Ready Player World. Here's a chance to play against JB. And if I separate you guys out, it gives more opportunities to play against one of you guys, which I think some people will enjoy.
Yeah.
So
we get the targets.
But I'm sure you guys are going to get everybody's best shot though. So I can tell you that. But if I had to put my chips on somebody, it'd be you guys. So yeah, I'm excited for it. I'm very, very excited that you guys joined the league. I do think you'll like it a lot. So.
No doubt.
Looking forward to it. I mean, I already run kind of a manual league on our manual PvP server, and not as in depth as this. I try to go for a little bit more hands-free approach, just because manual everything takes 3 or 5 times, 10 times as long. So I tried to like cast and do, some of that commentary early on, and it was just lining up people in a schedule just to be able to even play a game just is, kind of troublesome. So
I remembered watching your content when you did KSaun, and I did enjoy watching it, but I did not envy you because I'm sure there's, like I said, it's long and there's a lot that goes into it. It's a half-hour video and playing probably one game or maybe two. But
yeah.
So do you have a plan for the playoffs this year, how that's going to work? I think I heard there was a redraft last year once the playoffs started. You going to maintain that, you think, or just kind of go in?
So this season, the plan is not to have a redraft. So I heard some probably more negative than positive feedback on the redraft last season. We didn't do a redraft in season 1. Everybody's teams from the regular season just went straight into the playoffs. We did it in season 2 simply because we had 2 divisions, which meant there were 2 different drafts, which meant there's a possibility of each unit could be twice somewhere, right? Like 2 different teams could have Naya, for example. And so we decided to do a redraft for the playoffs to basically put them back all into one pool. The problem is with a game like War of the Visions where, people have limited resources and stuff like that, you hit the playoffs. I mean, these people are really competitive and they want to win. And now let's say I'm picking 2-3 units that I don't have currently 120'd or 140'd. I am now investing my resources to get them up to speed so that I can win stuff like that. And imagine you lose in the first round of the playoffs after you just got this unit. That's going to feel really bad. So I heard some mixed things on that, but I would say more negative than positive. So we're not doing a redraft. It'll be the Wild West in the playoffs because I'm sure we're going to see some duplicates of some units that are doing, well across different divisions. The general format, yeah, probably a lot of Bradleys if I had to guess. But the general format is there's 4 divisions of 10, 40 players total. The top 3 from each division is guaranteed in the playoffs. And then basically after the regular season, the 4th and 5th seed of each division are going to have basically a play-in round against each other to make it. So it's kind of 15 playoff teams if you want to count the play-in to playoff. Otherwise, there's 12. But yeah, so if you're in the top half of your division, you got a shot.
I like it. No, that's smartly done. I actually like the change to maintain your teams, particularly because if you've gotten this far because of your team being good, you'd want to sustain that rather than just kind of giving a fresh new hand and having to, relearn all your strategies you might have had set up throughout the season and this and that. So, yeah, I think it's promising.
The league can be a humbling experience. That is one thing I'll say. Season 1, I did not do very well. Season 2, I started out rough, and I basically had to win, I think, the last 6 weeks. I lost 1 and just barely missed the playoffs, but I may or may not have won our toilet bowl from the last season. So there's something that I can put up on the mantle there.
So this is the year.
This is the year. I'm going up every season.
3rd time's the charm.
There you go.
I like it. I like it. Yeah, I have no idea what to expect or how I'm going to fare. Obviously, we're still in the drafting process, but even from a confidence perspective, there's so much that goes into this, and there's enough restrictions that I think there's enough parity that anyone can win on a given day. And you talk about the randomness or even just the mind games that go on. I'm super excited. I love my division. I think we'll have a good time, so definitely looking forward to it.
I did intentionally put you in the Rundall division because I know Jaden's your guy.
Thank you.
That was on purpose. I wasn't entirely sure who JB's favorite character was.
I don't know either, to be honest. Have we talked about this?
Probably Glaciella.
Nice.
If I had to pick one from the story.
Solid
That's a good
pick.
choice.
KSaun, do you have a favorite?
I'll be honest, I haven't stayed up to date on all of the story and stuff like that. So I'm going to pick a character that's basically dead before the story even starts. I'm going to go with Skahal just because he was my boy from way back in the day. And I liked him before he was popular. So I'll go with Skahal.
Got to be lightning elements.
Yep.
I like it. I think I was joking about that just a couple of weeks ago. I can't remember how it came up, but we were talking about it. And I thought it was very funny how they introduced this character who literally dies in the intro mission that they show you. Has no bearing on the storyline whatsoever. He literally dies before the storyline even starts. It obviously has some trickle-down effects to the lore of the 2 ninja clans feuding, but that was very funny how they just introduced this guy and he's just literally not in the game.
They did him dirty.
Yeah.
That whole side story was great. That was one of the better ones, though, I think, just from the totality of the story. So
I agree.
It does have that. The Saiga, Goga, 2 parts or whatever were great.
Yeah, that was perfect. So cool. All right. Well, I think that basically covers everything we want to talk about. I think draft went pretty comprehensively through what to expect. Obviously, we'll be mentioning it here on the podcast to kind of reflect things. And, I'm sure I'll have some fun replays to share if some cool stuff happens. And obviously, you'll have your content coming out for it as well. But I think that wraps everything we wanted to cover tonight, guys. Any other final closing thoughts or things to mention?
Oh, just thank you guys so much for having me on. This was a blast. Super fun to do.
Yeah. So thank you for coming on. And spending your time with us. Really looking forward to the league. Happy to be a part of it. I do want to talk to the viewers as well for a second. We've been kind of in a drought for Q&A questions here for a couple of weeks. So if there's anything that you want to see us talk about, throw them down there and we can do that next time.
Most definitely. Yeah, again, KSaun, thank you so much for being here and looking forward to having you again. And guys, tune in to the Draft League. Hopefully learn some fun things about units that you hadn't seen prior. And that's it for tonight. Thanks for tuning in, everybody, and we'll talk to you all soon.